Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Cass. Today I want to talk to you about something that's super exciting, which is totally new to me that I've never ever used before yesterday. And they're alcohol inks. They're really, really exciting. Now, what are alcohol inks? Alcohol inks are fast drying, highly pigmented, alcohol-based inks. Now, they're generally used on non-porous surfaces, which means glass, ceramic, plastic, metal, plaster, all different kinds of non-porous surfaces. Which means that if you take it and you put it, as you would India ink, onto a paper, it does not sit on the surface of the paper, it bleeds right in, which seems to be a detriment until you put it on a non-porous surface and see what it can do. Okay, so what are advantages to alcohol inks? One of the advantages, the prime advantage in my mind, are brilliant colors. The colors of these dye-based inks are out of this world. You've never seen colors so bright and brilliant. Another advantage is textural effects. You can get really, really, really cool textural effects on non-porous surfaces with alcohol inks that you just cannot do with other media. One of the advantages is that they are completely waterproof once they are dry. They are fast drying. A drop on a non-porous surface can dry within seconds. Another big advantage is that work surfaces can be cleaned with alcohol afterwards and reused, which is really cost effective because you can buy a bunch of small mirrors or ceramic tiles or pieces of glass or whatever and practice with your inks on them and just erase them with alcohol and start again after. Another big advantage is that dry inks can be reactivated by wet inks, by alcohol, or by blending solution. So, like with the dry ink that you see before me on this mirror, if I drop more alcohol or blending solution or ink onto it, that will reactivate, it will re-dissolve the ink that's on the surface. It will have a different appearance than ink that you put onto a surface wet with alcohol already. So you can get all kinds of different effects doing wet on wet or wet on dry with your inks and your blending solution alcohol. One thing that I really like about them is I really like watercolors, and there are some neat watercolor-like effects that you can get with these inks if you put a light layer of blending solution on your surface and paint your ink directly into that wet surface. You will get some really, really interesting watercolor-like wet on wet effects. Okay, so what are some disadvantages to alcohol inks? One is that they will not layer, they repel each other, so as you drop one into the other, it will push the other ink away instead of sitting on top of it or necessarily blending in. Another disadvantage is that it is highly staining, so you're gonna want to wear gloves, use a good deal of paper towels, make sure that your work surface is a surface that you do not mind getting stained, or you can cover it properly with plastic wrap, newspaper, whatever you want. Another disadvantage is that there are no brush strokes, and I personally love brush strokes because I'm familiar with, well, acrylic the most, and I love to see every little stroke. So that I found very unusual. And there are very few brush strokes because the ink spreads so easily on a smooth surface that it hits the surface and just runs wherever it wants to. Another disadvantage is that you cannot really use it very well on porous surfaces like paper. It works, but it does not fulfill its true potential on a surface that it can sink into. One other disadvantage is that ventilation is really necessary because the fumes can get a little strong and the alcohol is flammable. What do you absolutely need to start? Well, you need some ink. Generally, I would recommend having at least 3 different colors. That's what I started with. I've got red, a blue, and a yellow. They're not exactly primaries, but they'll work. I also have a gold, but you don't need to have any metallic tones. You just need to have some primary colors. You're going to want a little bit of blending solution because you can use alcohol for blending, but you will see that there are certain things that alcohol just does not achieve the same effect that blending solution does, so you're going to want some. You will want a plastic palette. I use this plastic palette here that has many little wells that I can use for blending my different colors. I use this one for my dirty alcohol, and I use another compartment for my clean alcohol to clean my brush. These alcohol inks are very tough on brushes, so don't use a brush that's very near and dear to your heart because it will not last long in this ink, but that's not the end of the world. So you'll need some cheap-ish brushes, a plastic palette. You're going to want some droppers or syringes, like this dropper or this syringe here, for dropping color. Some Q-tips for both for blotting, for dropping blending solution, for doing all different kinds of things, for blending, as far as you can blend with this. So all kinds of tools like that will help you. Paper towels, gloves to protect your hands. So let's talk about using the ink a little bit. The biggest hindrance that I find is that it doesn't want to stay where you put it. And it will not layer, it repels itself. So a drop of blue does not blend into red surroundings to make purple, nor does it sit on top and make another layer. It will just simply push the ink away underneath it. So to me, who uses acrylics and watercolors and oils and uses layer upon layer upon layer to build up an image, this was a totally alien concept to me. I'm not familiar with that at all. And I know you might be thinking, it sounds like it might be more trouble than it's worth, but wait, don't miss out. You can do a lot with these inks, and the sheer brilliance of these dye-based colors will make it all worth it upon the first usage, I am certain. If you Google alcohol inks, you will find lots and lots and lots of references. A lot of them will be for a more abstract type of art, which is fine. But I admit I was a little discouraged in my search because I am not much of an abstract artist. While I am certainly not a realist, I don't really enjoy abstract art very much. But these inks are not only for abstract art, and they're not only a decorating tool, they're not just for making beautiful patterns on stationery. With a little bit of organization and some thought as to how the inks move and to how to restrain them a teeny bit, you can make some really, really wonderful effects. If you have masking fluid, use it to isolate your subject while you paint your background. So if you want to paint a picture of your cat and you've got a rough drawing of your cat on your surface and you want to make sure that your cat area does not have ink flow all over it while you're working on the background, you mask off the entire area of your subject, and then you are free to blend the whole background and do whatever you want with it. Then you can remove your masking fluid and work on your subject. I don't have any masking fluid right now. It is still on my grocery list. So what I did with my first painting was I tried to make somewhat of a stained glass effect, which I will show you in a little bit. And so I took some acrylic gel medium and I mixed black paint into it. And I piped that in a thin line to outline my image. And I filled my ink inside that image to give it a stained glass-like look. Another thing that I wanted to bring up was the metallic colors. They're not absolutely necessary. Like I said before, you really only need a couple of primaries to get going. But these are really, really cool. I haven't used any other metallic colors, but I noticed something really special about this one, is that it does not spread nearly as much or as quickly as just the regular dyes. And it actually does appear to sit on top. It doesn't seem to just repel the ink underneath. It really does seem to sit on top of already dried ink. Now, wet on wet, totally different story. But if I drop a drop of this ink right onto this dry ink here, it does appear to sit on top. So that makes these inks really, really cool for final touches. The first painting that I made with these inks, I painted a mermaid on a glass clock face. And I used this gold ink to make most of my finishing touches, bubbles and sunlight flecks in the water, scales on my mermaid's fin, all kinds of things that I used this ink for, and it was excellent. And I did get quite a brushy stroke with it. It did not spread nearly as much as the regular ink did, so that was really, really cool. So I definitely intend to invest in and explore with some other metallic inks. I think that's going to be really fun.
So this is an example of what it looks like wet and wet. Now if you want to work with wet and wet with these alcohol inks, you have to work quickly because they evaporate so fast. So lay down a little bit of blending solution and right away start working wet ink into it, like I'm doing with this deep blue. Notice how the ink bleeds into the blending fluid here instead of just forming a droplet on the mirror and spreading. Remember that you cannot really build up layers, so if you attempt to do this wet on wet technique on a surface that you have already painted on with inks, everything that you have already done will wash away with the alcohol. So just be careful and plan ahead. You don't want to have to do it twice. If you want to work ink wet and wet, be careful that you tackle a small area at a time because of the quick drying time. What I'm doing here is really fun. I'm making some bubbles by dropping teeny droplets of blending solution into the dried ink. The solution has no pigment, but it will repel or push away the ink where I drop it. So it will clear, as it were, a teeny space where the ink is no longer. So now I want to show you my first finished alcohol ink piece. I painted this on an old clock face to use the glass, obviously. And I really liked the way that these inks looked on the glass. I'm definitely going to use that again. I love the wonderful textures and forms that you can get in the ink on a glass surface like this. I adore it. My second project with these inks is on a mirror, which is going to be really cool as well, I think. I'm painting a stream in winter all full of bubbles and rushing water and ice, and it's going to be really cool. I think the mirror is going to lend itself really, really well to that kind of project. Can't wait to get myself some ceramic tiles to practice with as well. If you are interested in these inks, I suggest you look up the channel Miriam's Nature because she has a fantastic, in-depth video about using these alcohol inks, and it is fabulous.
So I'm very much looking forward to using this medium more and finding out more about it. It's very, very exciting, and I don't know much about it yet, but I'm really excited to learn more and share more with you once I have made some more discoveries. So I hope that this was useful and interesting, and I will see you next time.